Hello and welcome to the LiveFitNow podcast. This is episode 9 and we have a wonderful conversation coming up all about acupuncture. I can't wait for you to listen, and please do get in touch once you have to let me know what you think. My guest today is an acupuncturist, member of the British Acupuncture Council for 8 years, business owner and mother. Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the show, Kim Child.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you today?
Pretty good. In what, 6 weeks of lockdown?
We're certainly in strange times, aren't we?
Very strange times, but really interesting times though. Yeah.
It's true, absolutely. And I would really love to start by just giving you an opportunity to explain to people that may have no idea what an acupuncturist is or does, or they have a vague idea but not necessarily the nitty-gritty. What is it that you do?
What is it I do? I basically restore people's energy. Now that sounds really basic. That's a one-line sentence there. But that's really what an acupuncturist does. So it's a very in-depth process when you work with patients. We're a lot luckier than GPs because we, get 2 hours because we're paid acupuncturists, and you pay out of, it's not covered by the NHS, although there's some acupuncture covered by the NHS. And so we really take an in-depth look at somebody's health, from their main complaint to their spiritual health, and that doesn't mean religious, but that means how they are in their mind and how they feel in themselves emotionally. And then we take into account any internal symptoms that they're having. A good example would be IBS. Another one would be period pain. And so you take the examples from what they give you in a Western sense and sort of change them and consider them out into a traditional Chinese medicine sense, and then treat them from there with points on the body that are on meridian channels, as some people may have heard of that. So there's over 350 points on your body, and they all they're all on an organ system. And that's how we diagnose, is through a specific organ. And then we work from there with what point we choose to work with the main complaint or the health issue the patient is experiencing. I hope that kind of explains it.
That was a great summary in where it comes from, because it's obviously a Chinese medicine originally. But I think perhaps if anyone has a vague idea of what it is, they're probably thinking needles. And is that true? Is it just, very crudely putting it, is it sticking needles into our bodies, or is it something a little bit?
Well, it's a lot more refined than sticking needles. You definitely are using needles, but I also use acupressure on people. And sometimes if I have a patient who's very afraid of a specific point, or they're very fearful of that, you use pressure. And within the new scape of Corona, I've gone virtual, where I prescribe acupressure points to my patients to use while they're not getting needled. And actually, it's been quite successful, the energetic outcomes with my patients of getting them to apply their own points. So yes, needles are a big part of acupuncture, and people often have some people have quite a fear of needles. But I think what the general public doesn't know is there's actually a huge scope of what Chinese medicine can offer. So I think as a practitioner of 8 years, the scope of medicine I offer is dietary. It's often very lifestyle based. It's often affirmations, meditation. It's being able to refer to a good, another person like yourself who can help that person. So it's much of a complete picture of health that I'm working with. But yes, we do use needles in a sense on one-to-one treatments, and they vary in sort of length and size and thickness. So you can use very fine needles, and sometimes I challenge people to even feel the point. So I've worked with very highly sensitive people and young people too, like from the age of 13 to 14, who really are quite nervous, and they've come back to me again and again. So it's all down to the intention of the acupuncturist. And you can needle quite heavily if you have to, or you can needle very lightly. So that's the thing about needles, but there's also several other methods that we use within the scope of acupuncture. So one of them will be gua sha, and gua sha is a scraping tool that we use on, say, the neck and shoulders. If they were really stiff, we would use gua sha. Cupping is another one. A lot of people have seen pictures of cups on people and big round bruising marks. So cupping is another method. Tui na also I use, which is remedial Chinese massage, which is like using my hands instead of needles. So it's a lot about intention with Chinese medicine. So if I want to do something on a point and I use my finger tip to apply pressure, I will be able to get the change that I want through just centering and focusing on what the patient needs, and sort of being a conduit to sort of balance and restore their energy. Hope that's a good explanation.
No, that was great. That's really, really in depth. And I was wondering, is it often, I'm imagining it's very much individual basis. Do you find that you often combine the different methods?
Yeah. Yes. So an electroacupuncture was another one I didn't add in there. So electroacupuncture is quite popular in musculoskeletal world, and physios sometimes use that, and I'll get to that. But yeah, so yeah, just we use all different methodologies depending upon what presents that day for my patient, what they're telling me, how well I know them. You know, because you build a relationship with patients, you've got to get to know them. And that's really where the big changes happen for people, is trying to read what the physical and emotional attachments are to symptoms that they have, and how we're going to restore it so that that no longer presents itself. Yeah.
Thank you. And what conditions do you help people with? What are the main symptoms that people come to you with?
So main symptoms. So acupuncture, well, it's been around for 3,000 years. It's the main baseline of most complementary therapies that exist in our world. So if you think back to China 3,000 years ago, when they didn't have any doctors, they treated everything with Chinese herbs and acupuncture, and that was more from a barefoot medicine standpoint. Now sort of moving in obviously into where we are now. Acupuncture is really quite popular in the United Kingdom and all through many countries actually. So it can treat a huge amount of things, but specifically what I treat, I specialize more in women's health. But I've treated anything from migraines really successfully to IBS to heart palpitations. I've seen a fair bit of that. I support a lot of cancer patients. So you can see its applications are extremely wide. And if the layman ever wants to, or your listeners want to look up information, there's a huge amount of research out there on blind studies and placebo studies of what acupuncture can treat. I mean, notably, people think of it for musculoskeletal and say sciatica or lower back pain. We're great at that too, but there's a lot deeper chronic disease like stroke that acupuncture is excellent for and widely used in China. So as soon as you'd have a stroke, they would have the acupuncturist in there to turn back the effects within 48 hours. It's been shown in many studies, and I think the NHS is looking at it, to turn back the effects along with Western medications. I'm not saying that Western medications are not there, Western influence is not there, it is. I think that you'll see in the next 10 to 15 years a massive sort of combination of acupuncture being used with Western medicine. But again, we need all that research value done on it in the UK, and they are getting there. So, I mean, the NHS vets cancer support through the charity that I volunteer with. And I mean, we're seeing oncologists now recommend to the patients all the time to come to us for the symptoms that are caused by the medications that the patient has to be on. but we can calm those symptoms down with acupuncture. Often it's, breast cancer is a good example. If you look at some of those medications, the heat that it causes, so those people get a lot of night sweats and day flushes. Acupuncture can calm those symptoms down. So you can see it's a huge array of symptoms and chronic disease levels that acupuncture can treat. Fertility is another huge spectrum, and that is one of the big parts of my practice is fertility support. So.
It sounds like we're in a sort of that period of transition. I think it happens with a lot of the alternative therapies, that it takes time to get it given and supported by things like the NHS, because they obviously want the scientific studies to prove that it's not some just idea that's not true. So it seems like we're making big headway into actually having more and more alternative treatments actually available to us, that, as you say, marrying the two West and East coming together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And definitely I'm not anti-Western medicine. I think, you need Western medicine and people need medications, but we need to be able to balance the energetic output of what that medication does to somebody with another alternative therapy like acupuncture, like homeopathy, like Chinese herbs. There are so many options out there. It's not funny. But again, it comes down to a lot of those bodies, like the British Acupuncture Council, being quite a strong council and having a very strong research department, which a lot of acupuncturists are into providing case histories, and that is how we'll build, and we're always trying to build a relationship with the NHS at the British Acupuncture Council. There's a main part of the governing board that do that. Yeah. So yeah, it's not, it's also learning to talk in terms of Western medicine with doctors, but also with my patients, because my patients come to me discussing their symptoms within a Western scope. So we're always translating what that means in Chinese medicine. Yeah.
Absolutely. It sounds fantastic. And at least that you're trying to evidence everything that you're doing in order to strengthen the whole package. It's not just from your side, but also from the Western medicine side. So it sounds like an interesting time actually
it's very interesting. It's so rewarding helping, a cancer patient or somebody going through IVF. I mean, many IVF clinics now have acupuncturists right on staff for transfer day, for example. Now, I believe in a more longer complete package to get somebody through an IVF cycle, because it is very grueling what the medications do to the body to suppress, to get the ovaries to produce the follicles, and sort of the outcomes after that. But, you see a lot of, I don't know that the general public knows that, but there's a lot of acupuncture sort of on the scenes within the scope of Western medicine. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think that's what's interesting. I think people don't necessarily have an awareness of what's going on, because unless you come face to face with something and you've faced something in your life that makes you look for some sort of different help, and you're like, oh, that's there as an option. But actually it is already there fundamentally in lots of different areas. We just haven't necessarily stumbled across it yet. And do you think, or do you find with your clients, do you only have people that come to you with an issue specifically, or do you have people that will come in for like a general health check? They wouldn't really say they've got anything in particular wrong, but they come and have a session with you.
Yeah, so there are people that I've treated for now the whole entire time I've been in practice, for preventative health. Now, that's a very Asian perspective. Westerners don't have that perspective. We work on the, oh my gosh, it's broken, I gotta fix it. But what I try to get my patients to do over time, and that's not to retain them as patients. The great thing about me is you can come back within 7 years, because I hold files for 7 years. And I always keep my doors open for people. And I see people now over this time of where they have come for different things, but I do have a scope of people that realize that if they don't get acupuncture, they're just not in a sense, they're just not as balanced as they usually are. And they really look forward to their acupuncture just to give them a tune-up. And some people I'll see maybe 6 times a year, and that's all they need. Or they'll come to me when something ramps up in their life and they need some balance there. Often that can be a very emotional thing. For example, like a house move when it falls through, like the death of a loved one. So we're talking about very emotional things. Or for example, they lifted something heavy in the garden and their back went out. These are the, you do see people for preventative, but the main driver within, I guess, the psyche of our culture is it's broken. I'm going to have to go get this fixed. The doctor is not helping me. This is what I hear all the time. They're giving me just pain medications. It's not working. And what we want to do is actually look at the root cause of why somebody is getting the symptoms they're reporting to me. That's what's really important. So we deal with the root of somebody's issue, not the manifestation. Right? So most complementary medicines work within that scope. Now, I'm not putting down the Western method. All the poor guys, they have 10 minutes, to give you an answer. And they're going to have 4 or 5 options in their mind of something in a quick diagnosis. And that's what we have here in this country, and as well as in Canada, where I've come from. So, that's the Western medicine. That's how they work right now. I do believe functional medicine is a far better model, but I think we're a long way from getting there. And functional medicine is where we involve people like yourself, like me, like a doctor, and we all work as a team. And I think the more I work all the time with IVF, it is a team effort, what we all do. And that's how you maintain health. You're not going to maintain health from one methodology of medicine.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And it's exactly why I started this podcast. We are very much a reactionary society, and we're kind of stuck there, and it's going to take time to unravel that. And that's why I want to have these conversations with people, because actually if we can educate and empower, we can all make our own individual choices and hopefully actually stop ourselves getting to the point of illness if we can, and just try and look at the bigger picture. So thank you for joining me today to help with that. And actually, you mentioned that you are from Canada, and so I think this would be a really lovely opportunity just to tell us, how did you get here? Did you have a pivotal moment that led you to this path? You've been doing this for 8 years. I'm guessing you did something before.
Yeah, I did. I worked in the film industry in costuming. I know that sounds very strange, but that was the first career I had. And I worked very hard in that business. I loved it very much, but that business was really quite a lifestyle. And it wasn't just a job you went to every day. When you make a movie, it takes, 6 or 7 months of your life full time of 14-hour days. So at some point there, I started to get burnout as I entered into my 30s, and I started to get acupuncture. And I couldn't believe the effect that it had on me, and how much more relaxed and my anxiety settled, because I was always running at such a high speed, and I was so adrenalized in the business I was in. And when I would get acupuncture, I just feel a lot better. And I had my child, and sort of that's often a very pivotal moment in a woman's life. And my mind kind of changed about where I belonged in an industry that I loved. And I had to say goodbye to it, because I knew I just didn't belong there anymore, because it's not really a business that you can have little kids in, because it doesn't matter. The film's still going to roll and go and be made. And basically you're looking at your child being brought up by nannies in that situation if you stay in that business. So I went through a lot of career counseling at a certain point. I was very lucky to be able to do that, and came out with sort of 4 picks, and the top one was acupuncture. And then by some strange chance, my ex-husband, who I'm still really good friends with, who's Canadian, got a job offer in the UK to be a teacher. And we decided to just put our house up for sale in Toronto and change our life. And we thought we were going to be here for a year. And it ended up that I got over there and I said, you know what? I'd really like to do a degree. I'd like to do a degree in acupuncture. And it just so happened that one of the best schools is in Reading. That's my College of Integrated Chinese Medicine. That's where I studied. one of the best schools in the UK is there. And I, so it just sort of all fell into place. I didn't think I would have the qualifications, but I went into the interview and they said, no, you'll be able to learn anatomy and physiology, because I was quite worried about the Western end of things. But I think what I hadn't taken into account was my own personal experiences throughout my life with my own health and pushing it to the brink, and the influence of Western medicine and how much I'd learned actually from my own experience. And so, yeah, I went through the degree, which is almost 4 years, and that was quite a long time ago. So that's how I ended up here. And yeah, 8 years of practice has flown by, and I've been a full-time acupuncturist, and I love hopefully you can hear that in this podcast. I love what I do, and I'm very passionate about acupuncture and functional medicine really as a whole, and getting people healthy in whatever way that forms, into.
Absolutely. And do you think you will stay in the United Kingdom, or are you tempted to go elsewhere?
No, I mean, I like the United Kingdom, and I love my country too. Canada is a really great country. Toronto is where I'm from, and Toronto is a fabulous city if you ever get to go. It's beautiful. But I think both countries have great options, and they're both very good countries to be in. You certainly can't go wrong. So I'm lucky, I could go back, and I have the right to be here now, no problem. But yeah, so we'll see. But I have the tendency to like a warmer climate, maybe for winter time.
Oh, don't we all?
And here you got that chance. You're much closer. Toronto to Mexico is a 4-hour flight, and people don't just do that. They go, but here you could go live in Spain.
It's true. It's so easy. And they are two wonderful countries to be able to choose between, aren't they?
They are. Yeah. And they're not far. The flight's not far.
Well, thank you for sharing your story to get to this point. And I can see, and it's so interesting in other people I've talked with as well, that so often it is that moment where you've come to realize something within yourself. You've come back in tune with your own body, and it opens your eyes to a whole different way of approaching things. And I think being able to help others is just such a powerful thing, and it really draws us in, I think.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think we all learn from our own experiences at a very deep level. And I always encourage people to, even if there's trauma, and there's, because I deal with fair few trauma cases actually within the scope of acupuncture, to look at their traumas at a deep level and try to connect with them, but yet let's come out of it with what is a positive outcome of that disease you had, or that incident you had, or something that happened, because there's always something really positive to come out of something extremely negative, because they're polar opposites. It's much like the theory of yin and yang within Chinese medicine. It's much like the crisis we're going through right now with COVID. The world will change, but and you need extreme change to get people to change their mindset, actually. So it's quite interesting to me just to see people go through a process in what I do, and try to help them through along the way. And that's what I'm really quite passionate about, is seeing people come out the other end and thinking, oh gosh, wow, my perspectives are completely different now. That's okay that happened, and we're moving on from there. I don't have to get a terrible chronic disease stuck in my body. I needed to let go and think about all this. So
yeah,
about what
powerful.
happened. Yeah, it's extremely powerful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a great moment to ask you, actually, are there any common myths linked to your industry that you would like to debunk? What have we got the wrong end of the stick with?
I think, well, the one that I did mention earlier is, there's a bit of bee in the bonnet about physiotherapists practicing acupuncture. And within that, they're not actually practicing acupuncture. They are dry needling, because they didn't study the whole entire theory and have a degree behind their name which says LICAC. That's when that's a licensed acupuncturist. However, in their own right, that they're very good and they do very good work, but that's dry needling. So that's one thing I always like to say. And also in the United States, in several states, it's outlawed for physios to needle because they're not acupuncturists.
So would you say it's a good idea if someone has perhaps had dry needling and they haven't necessarily had a good experience with it, or they didn't get any benefit from it, not to write acupuncture off and actually give that a try, because it is a very different process?
Yeah, it's extremely different. It's organic within the focus of what the patient says. As I've noted, you've got a 2-hour consultation to speak about your health issue and then have a treatment. The style of needling alone, if you're just looking at the physical manipulation of a needle, will be very different given from an acupuncturist and a physiotherapist. Because you think we learned 3 years of practicing needling on pods. First of all, we don't practice needling on each other or needling anybody till clinic. Yeah. So physios learn in a 4-day course sometimes of how to needle somebody. So if you think of the manipulation just alone of the needle, it's extremely different. And I think if you've been in practice a long time as an acupuncturist, you will have how to adapt needle techniques for people who are quite fearful. I mean, and I've experienced people who have had negative treatments with physios and are actually really afraid of being needled by me, but they come anyways. So yeah, I would say, but I don't want to diss physios, because physios are really good, and sometimes trigger point needling is excellent, and that really helps a person, and that's great. They have experienced some form of needling. It's just not really classic acupuncture or classical based acupuncture. So that would be one debunked myth. I think, I don't know that the general public understands the rigorous sort of activities we have to go through too with practicing acupuncture. And there's a code of ethics. Much we're bound like doctors. We can't share any information about patients. We can't talk about patients. In fact, it comes to, if I see a patient in the grocery store, I can't even say their name in front of somebody if I'm with somebody. I've had to teach my daughter not to blurt out, "Is that a patient?" You know. So the ethics and confidentiality is massive, and we follow all those to the highest standards as a British Acupuncture Council member. Cleanliness too, it's up there. We're registered with environmental health. I mean, my premises is, all premises have to be as an acupuncturist, and I have to be registered as well with the council of Berkshire, which I am. Yeah, so there, you know, and I think people always ask me, one question that I pick up is, oh, how deep are you going to needle? And that is a question I hear from patients quite a bit. And it's really codependent on what the point is, the size of the person is involved, the muscle that you're needling into. Sometimes it depends where the point is, but people always say, how do you know the needle depth? So there's a master chart of how you know what depth it is, and the acupuncturist does know what depth to go to get a change for the person's symptoms. So that's another question I get quite a bit. And yes, needling over the lung, you have to be very careful, because you wouldn't want to puncture the lung. And we're very well, most acupuncturists, all of us would be highly aware of needling over anything that could cause a puncture. You don't needle deeply over the lungs. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's very reassuring. All of those points, I think, make a lot of sense. And also it's just having a little bit of understanding to give you a bit more confidence to give something like that a try, because I think of many of the alternative treatment options, it is a very physically obvious one that's what's going on. So it might be something that puts people off, but in fact, as you say, there are so many high set standards, and I guess that's something perhaps that people don't necessarily realize, that a lot of these alternative options have got stringent standards in place equal to the, doctors, etc., that we would expect to have. We perhaps would think, well, maybe they just kind of not make it up as you go along, of course, it's an ancient medicine, but the concept might be that it's a lot more flexible. But clearly there's a great structure there, which I think can give everyone great confidence to at least, give it a try.
Yeah, and as a British Council member, I mean, that's, we are bound by major ethics note taking. The public can call and complain to say this about an acupuncturist to the British Acupuncture Council. We have legal support. We have everything. That's why most acupuncturists join the British Acupuncture Council. You don't have to, because it's not a regulated body. And I think that makes people nervous too, to understand how we work with cleanliness and ethics and all of these things I'm bringing up. But if you're a member of the British Acupuncture Council, you have to follow ethics. Also, we have to do 30 hours of continuing professional development per year in order to keep our membership going. So it's quite we're regulated within our association. And that's not to say other acupuncturists who are not a BAC member are not good. I'm sure that their code of ethics are very strict, that they follow. But BAC members have to follow these things, or they might not have membership anymore. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to. It's the way of which you choose to practice these things, isn't it? And what do you think the biggest issue that your industry is facing in the future?
I think it's, for us, I'm quite interested in research and how it takes its form. And I think it's being involved more with Western medicine as again, in a functional aspect, and being kind of brought on board. And we are working on that all the time at the BAC. We're part of the Professional Standards Association. I mean, so we're constantly trying to, just get people on board with the fact that acupuncture actually is a really safe, cost-effective model. And in fact, we presented a video and a whole huge amount of research to the House of Parliament just before the COVID crisis. We had a big media extravaganza with the BAC, and we were presenting that to say to the NHS that actually, hey, why don't you take on board having acupuncture within the scope of the NHS, as it's far more cost effective for certain things. So I don't know where that's gone, because of course we've hit another crisis that, acupuncturists, because I've been asked this to practice too during the COVID crisis, but we're not frontline emergency services, nor do we have PPE to practice. So our insurance was halted. I can practice as a virtual practitioner, but literally they're trying to protect us as acupuncturists because we are not frontline. However, though, there's, I can see some of my cohorts in the United States dressed in full PPE in hospitals, practicing acupuncture. And acupuncture, obviously, this all started in China. Acupuncture was used with COVID. But that's a whole other arena of something that the NHS is just not prepared to bring on board, and nor would I think a lot of acupuncturists want to do that because of the high risk. I think we'll probably be looking at the after effects of what it's done and trying to support somebody's immune system and lung function, because it's a lung function disease, and trying to re-support the lungs to rebuild them because of the fibrosis. This is what it's doing on the lung, right? So and
the emotional trauma, I guess. I think a lot of people, even if you're not getting the illness, I think there's going to be quite a lot of backlash from that in the coming months and years. But as you say, we're kind of in the middle of it, aren't we?
Yeah, post-traumatic stress disorder for NHS workers for sure. And as the charity that I volunteer with, My Cancer, My Choices, we are actually we've already shot videos for acupuncture. We're just about to set up virtual consultations with, right now, I don't even know, we've got about 200 people just sitting waiting for treatment that we had to put on hold when we had to pull the plug. And some of those people will be a year out of their cancer treatment. Some of them will be right now having their treatment, radiotherapy or chemotherapy. So we're putting together a virtual model right now to help people during this crisis, which I think it's up in the testing mode this week. And I think we're probably going to be able to deliver it within 3 or 4 weeks, for patients that are, come to us at the charity. Yeah.
It's great potentially going forward as well, isn't it? I guess, because it is another way of reaching more people. As much as it sounds like it is a very much a one-to-one, you do need time with people, but there are ways and methods of helping people from a distance.
Yeah, we're very lucky as acupuncturists because we know all those points and we know how to talk to our patients to get them to apply acupressure. And if one point doesn't work, another one will. We've got over 350 choices. Now, some are harder to find than others, but I've got a lot of choice there to try to teach people virtually on the screen. I've been doing that for 4 or 5 weeks now, and it's been quite successful with most people. So that's been very exciting, actually. And we think actually with the charity that possibly it could go into a whole virtual section eventually that's being created for people if they've got cancer that may be too ill to get to us and they're not feeling well that day, or they don't want to come in contact with a cold. So we have to deliver the treatment virtually. And I do think after this, that will be quite a way of the future, or part of it, for a while. Yeah. So
I think it's definitely given us opportunity in lots of different industries to try different things that maybe were an idea, or perhaps it's just completely sprung from nothing in the last few weeks, and it's giving us new opportunities and things that I think in many people I've just talked to, it will carry on in some way. It's going to be another branch of being able to help people, and as you say, that is actually quite an exciting thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I like your word branch. That is exactly. It's another branch of your practice or what you do. And I as I said, great things come out of crisis. And you have to change your formative structure and think of different ways to help people and deliver something to them that's helpful. So, which is very exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you have any general tips or advice or techniques that the listeners could try at home to either make themselves feel a little more well, or just generally help their overall well-being?
Yeah. I think sometimes it depends on what some people's issues are, but generally the 3 pillars of health that you kind of look at are sleep, your digestive system, and breath. So if all 3 of those are working, then you're in pretty good health. Now that's saying you also have to have physical activity, eat the right food, that goes in the digestive thing. If you're getting a good sleep, you're probably physically active. And breath. I think breath is sometimes one of the most overlooked things, and one of the easiest things people can do. And that's to just sit down or stand up and do a breathing exercise for 2 to 5 minutes. Actually, that was a newsletter piece I just wrote last week to my group of people. And there's some great breathing apps on YouTube that coach you through an inhalation and an exhalation, looking at a beautiful beach scene. And there's just so many apps out there that can help too. So breath is really important because I think it's really overlooked. And it's also will calm anxiety and strengthen the lung function, which we want right now for immunity, because we don't want weak lungs. If you're thinking about the arena of the lungs too, a lot more people are on their computer. And I'd like people to check in on their posture, which I'm sure you talk a lot about, is not being hunched over the computer, because that weakens the lungs in Chinese medicine, by the way. So you want to be able to get up, move, and sit upright and not be hunching forward. That's definitely a tip there. If you think about sleep as another pillar, hopefully people are realizing the benefits of sleep right now. And I think somewhat the outcome of this crisis has been good, because people might be sleeping now a little bit better, but also some people are going to have a troubled sleep because they're very anxious about the situation. So I think if people are anxious about the situation, they have to really look at what they're doing at night, not looking at the television, not looking at social media. I'm really big on, curbing the consumption of media during this crisis, because it's only going to make people more anxious. I think we need to know the news, but I think constant looking at the news isn't a good idea. And I definitely don't think looking at the news at 10 o'clock at night is a good idea for people who have slight anxiety issues and sleep issues, and then they can't fall off. So I think really looking at just very little tweaks you can do, like consume your news like you consume your food. Think about it, be mindful of it, because it's controlling you in a way, which is causing negative feelings. And if we can just think about attracting positive energy now during this time, not negative energy, your life will be a lot better. So we don't know, bad things are happening, yes, but it's trying to attract good energy is always more important. And that helps breath, sleep, and digestive, if you think about it. And also in food, digestive, eating slowly is another tip that I always tell to people, because I find people eat really fast and it's terrible for your digestive system. And eating in front of the television and listening to news is also really bad, because your mind is elsewhere. It's not connecting with the food on the plate, which is so important. If you want to lose weight and you want your metabolism to be better, just eating slowly and looking at the food on your plate, and like being so happy about the food on your plate. We're lucky to have the food on the plate and taking that in. And so those are kind of real basic things, if you go with those 3 pillars, that I suggest to people. Yeah.
Being more mindful, getting that mind-body connection, just being aware of what we're doing at the present time. And I guess if you are being more mindful of what you're doing, it's also allowing you to not get distracted by other things. So it can actually stop you worrying about things, because you're focusing your energy on whatever the thing is that you might be doing, whether it be breathing, exercising, eating.
It's called just being in the moment. Yeah, just being with yourself, and then not expecting anything to happen too, not being so, just over adrenalized, which is what media and what this whole situation will be doing for certain people.
Focusing on more calming aspects. Well, that's something that we can control right now, and it's focusing our energy on that rather than everything that's happening around us. We actually have no control over that. So if we can try and just limit how much of that is having influence over our lives, hopefully it will just keep us in a better frame of mind until we get to the end of all this.
Exactly. I agree with you. We have no control. And I think when people realize there's certain things you can control and there's certain things you can't. And so quite important. Yeah.
And I've got quite a broad question for you now. And you can answer this in the concept of your entire life or just your business, completely up to you. But what inspires you?
What inspires me? Art, creativity. I think art and creativity is the deepest set of knowledge that anybody can have in their life, and that can translate into your business, that can translate into the food you cook every day. I think just being creative and letting your mind go into certain areas that you don't think are possible is a really interesting thing to think about, and not being stuck in some paradigm that we all get into sometimes. And that you can change things if you want. It's really possible. You just change your mind. People get very hung up on things, and I think if you're just easier on yourself and you give yourself a chance, you'll be amazed at the creativeness and the process that can envelope and change in your life. And so yeah, I'm big on creativity, and I do think it's so important that people express themselves through creativity, but also I think that comes out an expression of your emotions too, and whether that be negative or positive, but it will help people balance out what they need. So, and it's a great time right now to be creative. People are at home, man. You can do something, paint a clay pot, draw a picture, dance around your kitchen. That's being creative. Act out a monologue you've always thought. Read a poem out loud to yourself. Make a beautiful, vase of flowers on your table. It doesn't, to be creative doesn't mean you have to create some symphony like Tchaikovsky, It's unique to each individual, just as our health is as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. And do you take time?
Encapsulates.
It really does. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, do you take time every single day to be creative? Do you deliberately make sure that you have a little bit of time every day to do that?
Really try my best, and I set out, I'm a visual artist, so I set out cards and things I've been doing now to send to people in the mail, and I love it's just doodling. It doesn't have to be serious, and that's what I try to get people. It's like, it doesn't have to be the Mona Lisa. Okay, it just
doesn't have to be good.
It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be an expression, because when we go to that different part of our mind, we come out of the central nervous system and we enter into the peripheral nervous system, where we don't live often. And that's that space that when you were a little kid, you remember baking a cake, or you drew something, or you did something. And that space is really important to remember from your childhood to bring in to your life now, where you are. And don't ever let it go, because it's a wonderful place to be in, and it takes you out of an over adrenalized or task orientated, or so even if you set aside 10 minutes or 20 minutes to do something, knitting, fabric, there's so many things, tinkering with cars, tinkering in your shed, that is creative.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The options are so endless, and it's funny because I particularly think the sort of latter part of our education system is less encouraging of creativity. It becomes very much more structured. You need to do this, this, and this. You must follow the system, so to speak. And even for myself, for many years, I would say to myself, I can't do this, that. I'm not very good at that, this, that, and the other. But more recently, I've just come to realize, well, firstly, if you don't practice something, how can you expect to be good at it? And also, who cares? If you get some enjoyment from it, just go for it. And it might be baking, drawing, coloring. Coloring books are massive now. It's a very relaxing thing to do. And again, but it's finding what you like to do, I think, because it's very easy to sometimes be a little bit overwhelmed by all the things that people are doing right now, because everyone's sharing it on social media and like, oh, I'm doing this, and that can become a pressure too. And it's like, it doesn't matter what other people are doing, but what do you enjoy doing, and just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Just do it. And it doesn't have to be shared. It's for yourself, really. And I think if people can go, oh my gosh, I feel, like, I know when I do a piece of art or I doodle anything, I feel a lot less anxious, or I feel a lot more focused too. And I think what people will be amazed to find is that new ideas and nuances that were never in the brain come up once you become creative, and you think, oh, I can approach, that issue differently that I've been thinking about all day, or, and you'd be so shocked if you do it as a practice. It's almost like I say to people, well, if you can't meditate, do something creative, because some people just don't, sink in well to meditation. I'm one of those people. I'd rather do yoga or art, and you just go into a different zone, and the changes are unbelievable, and the stuff you'll think of after is great that you'll come up with.
It's so true. And I think sometimes you can be stuck in a moment. Absolutely. You can be stuck in a moment. You're trying to force yourself to do something, and then you just reach a point where you realize you can sit there all day. It doesn't mean you're going to get to what you need to do. And if you step away, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, the ideas can just pop into your head at any brief second. But the chances are they wouldn't have if you just stayed sat at your desk. So it really is such a, if you're worried that it's going to be a waste of time, more often than not, what you'll find is your focus, as you say, your focus and your energy and your concentration and ideas will flow. So actually you'll end up getting so much more done by sacrificing a few minutes for something that you consider fun.
Yeah. And I think we need a lot more fun. And I think our society, and you're right about the system of education here, and in Canada, the arts are very important. And I think people, that's really the stem and flow of a very deep knowledge base, is looking at arts. And I'm kind of there with my 14-year-old daughter right now and what she's choosing for GCSEs. And, you know, at that age, art is really important because you will remember it for the rest of your life. You will remember certain things that you enjoyed in that age.
Yeah.
And you carry it through for the rest of your life, which is important. So, you know, yeah.
I think if people are struggling to know where to start, I think thinking of something you enjoyed as a kid is a great way of just starting with some ideas, because it's the strange idea that almost when we reach adulthood, there's certain things that we don't do anymore, but it makes no sense at all, because if we enjoyed it as a child, there is every chance, 9 times out of 10, that we're going to enjoy it as an adult. So, you know, why not still do it? We're all big kids, really.
There's a huge amount of research on that too, and about what age, if you don't continue to do it, that it falls away from you. And so it is really important. And I encourage people to think about that and go back in their lives and think about what they did enjoy and pick it up again, you know, and think about it. And it doesn't have to be serious.
No, it doesn't have to become a serious hobby, just fun that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
So I would like to finish off by giving you the floor, that you can share one thing. If you can take one thing that everyone would benefit from knowing, what would that be?
Benefit from knowing. That's it's quite important question. And I think it is that ultimately your body knows, and you need to listen to it when it's not feeling great and you do think there could be something that's not going well, and that do listen to yourself, and try to connect with your body on not just touching your knee or touching your elbow or something and saying that's painful, but try to think about how you feel in your mind and body and your spirit as a connected group of things that are not just subjectively different in places, and think about that. And you know, wellness is mental wellness is really important, physical wellness is important, and spiritual wellness is important. And I don't mean religion there, I mean just how you feel in your self, soul, you could use that word, spirit. But listen to your body, listen when something's wrong, because often you do know when something's wrong. And I think that would be one thing I would tell people to take away. And, you know, go to the doctor if you need, but otherwise you'd have to seek out other, you know, areas of help. And yeah, wellness can be found in many ways. It's not just medications. Wellness, as we know, as we're learning, is food, it's spirituality, it's exercise, it's creativity. It's so many things to be well. And you have to look at those different areas in your life, and not take on too many, but don't oversimplify, but don't make things too hard to organize for yourself to feel better. That's kind of hopefully a good takeaway.
I think everyone will agree that it really is a nice clear way to finish this off. And I'd like to give you the opportunity also to share how my listeners could find you if they wanted to get in touch or find a little bit more about acupuncture. Whereabouts are you on the internet?
I'm at kimchild.co.uk, and my website is there, and you can check that out. You can also search, if a wider audience definitely will be listening to this podcast, if you'd like to search an acupuncturist in your area, you can look up the British Acupuncture Council website, plug in your postal code, and a list of practitioners will come up in your area that are BAC members and would follow those code of guidelines that I spoke of. And then you know for sure that their education was a degree education and they are a licensed acupuncturist. So that's some information there. And I'm always open. People are welcome to give me a call or drop me a line. I have free consultations, and I'm happy just to chat with one person on the phone, virtually. I do it all the time. And, I even give lots of tips to people, even if they don't come see me for treatment. I just like to talk to people, and that's cool. I'm good with that, so call me up and have a chat.
Great. I'll pop those links up onto the show notes so people can just click through and get in touch if they'd like to. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been very interesting, and I'm sure people are going to be so much more enlightened and have so much a better understanding of what acupuncture is. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for your time, and it's been very nice. It's been a nice chat.
It has.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to episode 9 of the LiveFitNow podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. I would love it if you were able to share this podcast with your family and friends on social media. Don't forget you can subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please do leave a review on your chosen listening platform. Thank you. Until the next time.